drive your third shot and drop your fifth, get into the kitchen. Sounds all simple, right? I learned this strategy over a year ago because I see high-level players and pros do this all the time. It just works. And yet, it took me over a year to finally be able to execute this strategy consistently. For the longest time, I kept on driving my third shot way too hard, so the ball either flies past the baseline or gets dumped straight into the net. Now, when I kill my third shot drives like that, there is no fifth shot I can drop. And I kept on getting told by coaches and random players at the park that I should just drive my balls at 70% or drive the ball softer or things like don't rip it. That all makes sense. At the end of the day, how hard can it be to hit the ball less hard? And yet, game after game, rig play or tournament, I kept trying to rip that winner drive. If you're still watching this, there's a good chance that this is bothering you as well. So why is it such a simple ask of hitting the ball softer so hard to execute in the game? It took me over a year, but I think I've just figured it out. And the reason is not what you think. In this video, I'm going to break down the hidden psychological reasons that caused me to keep overheading my drives and what changes I made that fixed this issue. Stay till the end of the video because the solution has nothing to do with the technique itself. But let's first talk about why the third shot drive and the fifth shot drop works. In modern pickleball, everything is faster. Balls are harder, the paddles are more powerful, spin generation is at all-time high. So the return of serves are now faster, deeper, and heavier with topspin, which makes hitting high-quality third shot drops consistently more and more difficult, even at the pro level. And that's why the high-level players adapted. So instead of forcing perfect drop shots on their thirds, they started driving the third shot, not to win a point, but to force a weak block, giving them an easier fifth shot drop to allow them to move into the kitchen. It's definitely a great strategy if you can make your drives, but if you keep on ripping the ball into the net or past the baseline, there is simply no fifth shot drop for you. Firstly, let me share with you why I had a tendency to drive my ball way too hard. When I think about a drive shot, I associate it with offense, with power, and with dominance. Because whenever I hit a really good drive, with a lot of pace and spin, I can win the point outright. And when my opponent mishandles my drive shot, I know there was absolutely nothing they could have done about it. That feeling, complete dominance over my opponent, is incredibly satisfying, and honestly, it's a little addictive too. So naturally, I kept on chasing that feeling. And I kept on ripping my drive over and over and hoping I would be able to recreate that satisfaction with that perfect winner drives. And early on in my pickleball journey, that obsession with dominance made me ignore something very, very important. And that is, great drives just don't happen very often, at least for me. When I finally reflected on it, I realized that on average, when I tried to rip the ball as hard as possible, I was actually losing more rallies than winning them. And that actually makes total sense. Hitting the ball very hard on your drives, in fact, on any shot, dramatically reduces your margin for error because it makes the timing harder, it demands better hand-eye coordination, and it requires better footwork and better technique. And the truth is, I don't have over 1 million reps of tennis ground strokes. So when I tried to rip the ball at full speed with inconsistent timing, imperfect footwork, and average technique, honestly, it was a pretty dumb decision. Or some people may call this having too much ego. Now, don't get me wrong, I've seen high-level players with strong tennis background and some pro players who can absolutely rip the hard drive shot after shot with consistent pace, spin, and great placement. But that's not me. And once I finally accepted that, everything started to change. Now, I could have just spent a ton of time practicing my drives to make them better. In fact, I actually did that for a while. But eventually, I realized something else important. Pickleball is not just about drives. At the end of the day, it's not tennis. There are so many other shots in pickleball that I also need to improve if I want to become a better overall pickleball player, such as drops, resets, dinks, or just things like footwork, positioning, and stamina. All of these together would make me a better pickleball player, not just the drive shots. And with the limited time each week that I have to work on my game, I simply can't afford to reinvent the drive and hoping that one day I'll catch up to somebody who has been ripping ground strokes their entire life. And here is the first real change that I made. I started accepting that my drive is not a strength of mine. And I stopped expecting my drives to be able to set up easy, shake and bake for my partner. That acceptance was not easy. For someone who was so obsessed with chasing an absolute dominance through powerful drives early on in my game, admitting that my drives were relatively weak felt like I was losing something fundamental as a player. I honestly felt like it took away part of my identity on the court. But looking back, I think I'm really glad that I made that mindset change, because even though it may look like I've lost the battle of drives, but this was a crucial first step towards winning the war. The war of staying in points for longer, the war of playing smarter instead of harder. And speaking of winning wars, no war can be won without a good pair of shoes. Shoes that are actually made for pickleball. Wearing standard tennis shoes for pickleball is like using a luxury sedan for an off-road race. It might look the part, but it isn't built for the specific stress of the terrain. Monte's pickleball shoe is the purpose-built rugged vehicle designed specifically for the off-road lateral intensity of the pickleball court. You see, when you're at the kitchen line moving laterally, dragging the side of your shoes from left to right so that you can hit your buttery smooth things, it wouldn't take very long for your normal court shoes to just get blown out. That's because tennis shoes or normal court shoes were not originally designed for these types of movements and the wear and tear that comes with them. Montes Pickleball understood this because the founders of the brand are passionate high-level pickleball players themselves. They turned years of frustration into motivation and came up with this elegantly designed high-performance premium shoe, specifically engineered for pickleball, adding protections to where protections are most needed, removing weight where weight is unnecessary. The high density outsole with non-slip texture makes the Montes Drop pickleball shoe one of the longest lasting in the industry, while providing unbelievable comfort and stability. The crash resistant toe cap provides extra protection for the forefoot movement, giving you a peace of mind the next time you're out on the court. And all of this for as little as $98 if you use my discount code JANG. Why not give them a try? I'll put the link in the description down below. Losing the battle of drives was a big step forward. With this new mindset, when I was being mindful about using less power, I was able to hit softer and more consistent drives, and I stopped giving away many free points. But my old mindsets did not disappear completely. It kept on creeping back in, and when it did, I started overheating again, missing my drives, and undid all that progress I thought I made. For a while, I was really frustrated, and it wasn't until I made the next mindset change, the one that I'm about to share with you, that everything finally started to come together. My softer drives became consistent in actual games. Early on in this transformation process, I kept on reminding myself, don't overhead my drive, head it softer. But the problem with that mental cue was that it was too isolated. It had no context, no reward, no real purpose behind it. Just telling myself to head the ball softer isn't a meaningful goal in pickleball, and honestly, it's also not a very rewarding one either. I just didn't have enough motivation to keep on doing it. It still felt far more satisfying to hit those winner drives with full power, even if it meant at the risk of missing the drives and giving up that point. So I knew I needed a new mental cue, one that would be more holistic, more rewarding, and easier to remember under pressure. And as it turns out, the hint had been there the entire time. It was literally in the first sentence of this video. Let me explain. Instead of looking at the third shot as an isolated shot and just remind myself to hit it softer, I needed to consistently remind myself why I was hitting my drive in the first place. I don't want to hit a softer third shot drive just for the sake of hitting it softer. I want a softer third shot so I can get that easier fifth shot drop, which allows me to move into the kitchen. In other words, the mental cue had to somehow connect the drive to the next shot. So I changed the way I talk to myself. And every time I prepared to hit my third shot drive, instead of thinking hit it softer, I stopped thinking about power altogether because I wanted to completely eliminate the temptation to rip a full power drive. And this is the exact thought process that I replaced it with. Before I hit every drive now, I tell myself something very different. I tell myself that I don't want my opponent to mishandle my drive. Instead, I want my opponent to hit a comfortable fourth shot back to me because I want to hit the ball one more time. In a way, I'm mentally begging my opponent, please don't miss the ball. Give the ball back to me again. And this approach worked incredibly well for me. Because once I started hoping my opponent would return my drive, I completely stopped thinking about winning that point on my third shot drive. Without realizing it, I became more cooperative with my third shot drives. It almost felt like I was feeding the ball to my opponent on purpose, because I knew if I drove that ball too hard, it was more likely that my opponent would mishandle it. And that is exactly why I didn't win, because remember, I'm mentally begging my opponent to not mishandle my drive and give that ball back to me again. And this cooperative mindset forced me to drive softly, unconsciously, without me even thinking about it. I wasn't trying to control my power anymore, because I was so focused on giving my opponent a ball that they could return back to me again. Does that make sense? And as a result, the temptation to rip a winner drive with full power completely disappeared, because my objective is now to give my opponent a ball that would easily handle and give back to me. And that's when I finally started to hit more consistent third shot drives, earning that easier fifth shot drop and getting to the kitchen far more often. Now you might be thinking, doesn't this mindset make you miss some opportunities? For example, those slow, floatier, waist-high balls that are perfect for a full power winner rip. And you're right, there are probably some easy points that I might be missing out on, but personally, I'm completely okay with that, because those exact balls were the ones where I used to overhead them, and quite often I would miss a lot of them. At the end of the day, pickleball isn't meant to be easy. I'm okay with putting in more effort into constructing each point and win it the hard way. And this is where my acceptance that drive is not my strength really paid off. It helped me realize that my strength is at the kitchen with my dinks and my hands, and that's exactly where I want to be for every single rally. If you found this video helpful, I'd really appreciate it if you give it a thumbs up. Everything I share on this channel comes from 3 places: my own self-reflection and analysis, learnings from my coaches and other high-level players, and also other YouTube channels. I share my journey from the perspective of an amateur player who started as a 3-0 player with no tennis or competitive sports background. If that resonates with you, consider subscribing for more videos like this in the future. And this is John from Backpaddle Pickleball. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.